Yes. Good morning, guys that are online. So we're going to start now. Can you just let me know if you can hear me? Just give me an indication in the chat function if you can hear the volume. Okay, so in today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to look at, this was last year's, so last year they had a sort of a take home type question. Well, these was one of them. Okay, so this one is not loaded on the intranet. So this is a copy I got somewhere else that give you the question and we're going to discuss the solutions today. I'm also going to upload the Excel file that I'm going to use onto VC Learn for you guys to have a look at then later on. Okay, so let's quickly start with the question. So question one, so this paper was 60 minutes. 60 marks. So your test next week is going to be exactly the same format. 60 marks, which mean 1 mark a minute. Okay, now you will see there's a lot of information. Just going to scroll down to where the questions are. So there's a lot of information that you guys need to work through in order to answer the question. So you'll see question one was 20 marks, which focused specifically on your depreciation. And then we had question two, which also looked at depreciation. One also had your asset disposal. And then question three was your financial statement, your disclosure. So what we're going to do is we're going to work through each and every question. And then if you've got any questions, then you can just let me know. For the guys in class, you can raise your hands. And the guys online, just type your comments in the chat function if you've got a question. Okay, so we'll start with question one. The first thing you need to go do is you need to read what is the required. So they ask you to prepare the following general ledger accounts. Okay, for Hogwarts traders, and it is on their financial year end is 31st of December 2019 only. Now, the reason they only tell you it's for that year is because normally with depreciation, there could be multiple years. But by limiting the year that you have to disclose, they limit the amount of information that you have to record. So then they actually give you a hint. Now, they might not do this in your test, is to say start with the opening balances and balance the account at the end of the month. That you probably won't see in your test, but they would still expect it from you. So you have to do the normal recording of a general ledger account. So open the account with what is the balance in the beginning of the year or the beginning of the month. And then once you've done all the transactions for that relevant month, go close it off. Now, what you also had to see is you can ignore that. So they made it quite easy for you just by asking you the basics of how to do the asset disposal. They're not testing your knowledge on that, which was first semester. Now, the accounts they've asked you to disclose is the vehicles, accumulated depreciation vehicles, depreciation, asset disposal, profit and loss on sale of vehicles. Now you can see a lot of the mark allocation is going to your asset disposal account and accumulated depreciation. Now the reason the accumulated depreciation amount might be that large is because there is generally more than one asset, the periods differ, and there could potentially also be different methods of depreciation that you need to apply. Okay, and then they specifically tell you to show all your workings. Now I want you guys to remember in your test to show the workings, because if you've made a mistake, I can still give you assign some of the marks if you showed me your calculation, whereas if I just see an incorrect amount, I have to give you a 0. So this will help you by showing a calculation to actually pass the question. Okay, because normally what most people do incorrectly is they apportion the incorrect months or they apply the incorrect method. So instead of applying cost, they apply reducing balance method or vice versa. but you still get a mark. If you have to do the reducing balance method, you would still get a mark for the percentage, a mark for the cost price, and then the period that you have to allocate. So out of the 4 marks, you would then only lose 1. Okay, so let's see what other information they have provided to us. If we go back to the front of the question, they tell you the following information was taken from your fixed asset registers. Now remember, your fixed asset register shows when you purchased a vehicle or an asset, what date you purchased it at, what was the original cost of it. It shows you what depreciation method is applied. Then what you would see on the right hand side, they've got the current depreciation, accumulated depreciation. So your asset register shows you each year's depreciation charge for that vehicle as well as the accumulated depreciation. Now that is adding every year's depreciation together to get to a cumulative amount. And then the year that you have to calculate, you will see that they have indicated that as question marks so that you have to physically go work it out. Now, if we look at the first car, it was bought 1st of May 2015 for a value of 320,000. We apply the 10% reducing balance method, which means we work it out on the carrying amount, the depreciation, and the carrying amount is calculated your cost less accumulated depreciation. Okay, so that's how we get to the carrying amount. So we apply that 10%. Now, when they give you a table like this, this would be your accumulated depreciation, your opening balance that you would apply to the cost, and the cost is what they have given to you here. So that is the cost amount. So they actually disclose all the information you require in that one table. Then also important to note is that we sold that vehicle on the 1st of July for 250,000. Now, that means we potentially only have a portion of the year's depreciation that we will apply. Then if we look at the second table, that is vehicle number 2, we purchased it on the 1st of August. So we sold the first vehicle and then we bought a new one. And we bought it for 150,000. And this one we use the 15%, the straight line method. Now, when we do straight line method, it is based on the cost of the asset. Okay, where the previous one was the reducing balance method. So you can see in this question, they are testing both depreciation methods and as well as a part depreciation for the year. So we didn't have depreciation for the entire period, so you have to go apportionate. We sold an asset, so we also need to do the asset disposal. Okay, so that is what they want from you. So let's go see what do we do in recording our general ledger account. So if we start with the vehicles account, we start with the easy information first. We know that the vehicles in the beginning of the year had an opening balance of what? 250,000, that 320,000. That was the original cost of the asset. And where did I find this information? If I just scroll back to the first table, this cost here is our opening balance, because we only had one vehicle in the beginning of the year. Then we said the 102,272 is the opening accumulated depreciation balance, because that is the balance at the end of the prior year, which would be the opening balance in the following year. So going to my accumulated depreciation account for vehicles, I can automatically go do the balances amounts. Okay, so By just doing the balances, you would already have received a mark just for the opening balances. Okay, now what other information do we have in the question that we can already enter? So we also know, based on this, if we go to the second one, is we purchased another vehicle on the 1st of August for 150,000. So in our vehicle account, it will also increase on the 1st of August with another 150. So that is information you can just capture based on the tables they have provided to you. Now, what is important to note is please remember to include the folio numbers when you do your general ledger accounts. You do actually get marks for these in most instances. Okay, because of the fact that we purchased it for cash, the account we are taking it to is bank. Okay, now the next question is, we said we disposed of an asset. If I go back to table 1, we've disposed of the asset on the 1st of July for 250,000. So that means I need to do the asset disposal account. But before I can do the asset disposal, I need to go work out how much additional depreciation do I need to account for that specific vehicle. Because when we do the asset disposal, we take the cost and the accumulated depreciation amount up to that date, just before we sell it, to work out what the carrying amount is. Now, as you can see from this table, the last date we have calculated depreciation was up to 31st of December. So that means we need to add an additional 6 months, another 6 months worth of depreciation up to date of sale. So that would be from 1 January 2019 up to 30 June 2019 when we sold it. Okay, so that's how I got to the 6 months. Now, because we said depreciation is on the reducing balance method, we take the carrying amount at the end of December. So the carrying amount is calculated as, it is the 320,000, which is the cost, less the 102,272, which is the accumulated depreciation, gives you a carrying amount of what amount? If you take out your calculators, what amount do you get for the carrying amount?
$217,728.
Okay, so the answer from the class was 217,728. Okay, so that is the carrying amount. Now, because we're using the reducing balance method, our depreciation, let me just scroll, for that period would then be the 217,728. We would multiply with the 10% per the table. And we said we only had that vehicle for 6 months in that 12-month period. So that means an additional depreciation amount of 10,886 Rand and 40 cents would need to be accounted for. Okay, now where do we put additional depreciation? We put it into our accumulated depreciation table here. So we add the additional depreciation charge for the vehicle that we are selling, okay, to increase the accumulated depreciation to what it should have been the date just before selling that vehicle. Okay, so we're all up to there. You're all happy so far? The guys online, are you still okay? Okay, so now the next step is we are disposing of that asset. So when we dispose of an asset, there are 4 steps we have to follow when we do the asset disposal account. So the first step that we do is we take the original cost of the vehicle that we've sold and we take it out of our vehicles account. So we remove it and take it to the asset disposal account. So that is step one. Okay, so I've made a number 1 there to show you step 1. So you remove it out of the vehicles account and now you go place it into the asset disposal account. Okay, so that is the 320. Step 2 is I have to remove the accumulated depreciation at that stage for that vehicle, which would be these two items added together. So let's quickly add them together for you. If we sum them, it is 113,158.40. Okay, so that is the accumulated depreciation for that vehicle the date before we dispose of it. So now we remove that accumulated depreciation out of our accumulated depreciation account and move it to the asset disposal account as well. So that's step number 2. Okay? So now what we've done is we have essentially worked out what is the carrying amount of the vehicle at that particular point in time. Okay, so you're still okay with where we're at now. Now, what is the next thing we need to disclose for your asset disposal account to work out the profit? How do we work out the profit again? So we know what the carrying amount is of the vehicle. Let's see what other information they've given to us. They told us what we've sold it for. So how would I know what is the profit I made on that vehicle? Okay, so the answer from the class is we're taking the selling price less the carrying amount to work out the profit. And that is absolutely correct. So the third step is accounting for the selling price that they have given to me. Now, in your account, because your selling price would generally come into your bank account and you would debit your bank, you would then credit the asset disposal account with whatever amount you have received. Okay, it could also be a debtors control if I sell it on credit, or if I sell it via purchasing, higher purchasing, then it would be a HP loan. So you need to read what information they give you to determine what account would be here. Okay, so in this scenario, because it was cash, it's bank. If I sold it on credit, it would be debtors control. And if I financed it, it would be a HP loan. Okay, so just make sure that you read the information because this details could potentially differ. Okay, now once I've indicated the bank, which would actually be step 3. Okay, let's quickly just insert the symbol here so that you know it's step 3. Okay, so this is step 3. Okay, so step 3 is showing the actual amount you've got. Now the last item you have to do for your asset disposal is now we have to go balance this account to work out what is the profit and loss. Now how do I determine if we made a profit and loss? We know we sold it for $250. We know the carrying amount based on what we've calculated was before we accounted for depreciation was 217,000. So if we take the depreciation into account, it would be about 207,000, slightly less than that. So that means that would be less than the 250. So that means we add the right-hand side of our account together. That would be the bigger side. We transfer that total to the left-hand side. Okay? And then the profit and loss would be the balancing figure in this account. Now, because we said the amount is 363, our vehicle's original cost was 320. That means we made a profit of 43,000. 158 Rand and 40 cents. Okay, are you all okay with the asset disposal up to now? Okay, so let me repeat the 4 steps. The first step is I take the cost out of the vehicle account and I move it to the asset disposal account. Step 2 is I move the accumulated depreciation balance after I've taken any depreciation for that year into account, and I move that entire balance to the asset disposal account. Okay, so if we just had that asset, those accounts would be 0. Then we show how do we receive the payment. Is it a cash payment? Is it a credit payment? Is it a finance payment? So in this instance, it was cash, so we take it to bank. And then the 4th item is determine if we make a profit or a loss, depending on which side is bigger. Now, because of the fact you can do this calculation separately to go work out if it's a profit or loss. So let me quickly show you if you did the calculation separately. Let me just see if I've shown the calculations here at the bottom. Let's make sure I am not. So if we have a profit and loss, we know the selling price is 250. Okay, then we know the accumulated depreciation before we even took into account the current year's depreciation. Was that, and our cost price was 320. Then you add the current year depreciation, which we worked out is the 10,000. Okay, so then if we want to work out what is the carrying amount just before we sell it, we take the 320,000, we deduct the opening accumulated depreciation as well as the depreciation charge for the year to work out our carrying amount. Just going to move this to the right so that I don't cut off the text. So the carrying amount was 206,000. Now, if I compare that to the 250, I would know that the 250 is actually more than the 206. So my profit would have been, if I do the calculation separately, would be 43,000. Now, when I do this asset disposal account, I want to make sure I've actually documented correctly. I should get to exactly the same amount as the calculation I did on the side. And that's how you know if you put the cost and the accumulated depreciation and the amount you received on the correct side of the table. Okay, so this is just a little trick if you're unsure what the amount should be. Okay, now if I debit profit and loss on sale of vehicles here, then I would actually credit that account with that same value as what I've disclosed in there. But now there's one more thing we need to do. We said we purchased an additional vehicle during the year of 150,000. Okay, we still need to go work out the depreciation for that vehicle. Now we said, if I just go to the next page, or the next column, we purchased that vehicle the 1st of August. Our year end is 31st of December. So how many months have I used this vehicle for? 5. Okay, so we say it's August, September, October, November, December. So it's 5 months that I've had the new vehicle. So that means when I have to go work out the depreciation, I will take, because of the fact that we said it's on the straight line method, it's on the cost. So I know we paid 150,000 for this vehicle. We say our percentage is 15% according to this table. So I multiply the 150,000 with 15%. And because I've only used it for 5 months, I need to now go multiply it with 5 divided by 12. Because the 15% is for an annum. And that would give me a depreciation amount of, how much did you work out? Okay, so the answer given was 9,375 Rand. Okay, so I still need to go account for this new vehicle's depreciation in my accumulated depreciation account. Okay, so now I account for that depreciation as well, which we've calculated at the end of the year at 9,375. Now, when we do the depreciation account, you can do it one of two methods. I've totaled it together and accounted for the depreciation at the end of the year, which was the sum of these two together. You could also have done the entry separately. So you could have also shown it as follow. I'm just going to show you what was the alternative. You could have done the 10,886, 40 and then 9,375. So you could have also done it separately like this and then change the dates to the 1st and the 31st, and that would also have been correct. So you can either show it as two separate entries if you want, or you can go back to what I did as one entry. Okay, so it's totally up to you. We would have allocated the marks for either or. Okay, now the last step, yes, I've got a question.
When you're answering the question in text, did you have to include are you working out in the parentheses, or is that just for your sake?
The what?
The working out in the parentheses, the 10,000.
Oh, my brackets and showing what my workings are.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a test, I would suggest you put the workings next to it. You can also show it separately as under workings, and then just show me where you've done the workings. That's also fine. The reason I do it this way, as I told you, if you make a mistake in a test, so let's say I accidentally wrote you 103,272 instead of 102,272, I would still be able to get the marks for the 320, the 10%, and the 6/12, even though I made an error there. But if I don't show it and you have an incorrect amount here, you get a 0. Because I don't have time to go work out 50 students calculation. So that's why I showed like this way. This is how I want you to show it in the test as well. You can also show it separately at the bottom. You don't have to show it in the T account, but just show your working somewhere in your test, so that if you make a mistake, I can still give you between 50 to 75% of the marks, which will help you pass the paper. Okay, so that's the rationale behind it. Does that answer your question? Okay, so the last thing that you need to remember is they asked you to do the general ledger account. So now we have to go close off our accounts. Now they didn't ask for year-end closing transfers, so for your nominal accounts, you don't have to go close them off. It just means your balance sheet accounts, your vehicle accounts, and accumulated depreciation account. We need to go balance it. Now, what does that mean? I have to go look at what's in here. So the left-hand side is bigger than the right-hand side, so I add it together to get to 470. Then I transfer that 470 to the right-hand side. And then the balance that we are carrying down at the end of the year is going to be the 150. Because that is what is left over in that account. Okay, so in this scenario, we had a vehicle, we sold it, we bought a new vehicle. So it was easy what the balancing figure should be. Now remember, when you close it off, you need to carry over the balance. So you need to bring it down for the following financial period. You actually get a mark for this, and you get a mark for transferring the correct amount to the following period. So it's 2 marks just for balancing an account. And then we apply the same principle for the accumulated depreciation. Now, accumulated depreciation, the credit side will always be bigger than the debit side. So it's your right-hand side would be bigger than the left-hand side in this scenario. And then you balance it as well, which would be the new vehicles depreciation charge, and that is then your opening balance for the following period. Okay, and that is what you had to do for 20 marks in this question. Okay, do you guys have any questions on this?